You are the cause of your own problems, a sentence that most people immediately dislike, but one that today's guest has embraced and turned into a string of amazing successes.
There's a great episode of The Simpsons where Homer's in a bar and he, raises a glass and says, "To alcohol,
the cause of
and solution to."
all of life's problems.
And it's so funny, but I just went well, if you remove alcohol and replace it with you, because your own decisions and your own actions are what cause most of your problems, and your own actions and your own decisions usually solve them, it pretty much applies in the same way.
Jeremy's journey proves that radical responsibility can be the first step toward real freedom.
The thing that I think people get hung up on with purpose is that it's a job. It's a thing that they're striving to become. So like a doctor. I don't think becoming a doctor is necessarily the purpose driving that person to become a doctor. That person's purpose is to help and heal others, right? To be able to save lives.
Jeremy, welcome to the Grateful Podcast.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you for being here, man. Yeah, I find your story so interesting because, as I said beforehand, it's one of true gratitude. One of the worst moments in your life, a horrible knee injury, led you to find and embrace everything that now makes up what you love. How did you shift your mindset from seeing that knee injury as a setback to recognizing it as a gift?
Wow, how did I make that shift? I wish I could tell you that it was some intentional, beam of light moment that totally became clear and made a bunch of sense. But it was kind of like most of the progress I've made in my life, just small incremental things where until I looked back, I didn't really see it. That horrible knee injury sounds bad when you phrase it that way, but literally I hurt myself getting out of bed one morning. I had a very young daughter, and the grocery delivery guy shows up at 6 a.m. The dog starts barking. I literally stepped out of bed and collapsed on my knee, couldn't get up, horrible pain, couldn't walk. Still don't really know what happened, some sort of nerve damage, but nothing fully diagnosed. Anyways, long path of recovery I end up in a physical therapy office where the physical therapist says, if you don't start biking, you're probably going to end up replacing both of your knees. And that was scary enough for me. So I went out on Craigslist and bought the first bike I could afford and started biking to work because it just made a lot of sense to me. I was telling my brother that this was the idea that the doctor had. And he was just like, yeah, I mean, all you have to do is decide you're that weird guy who rides his bike to work every day. And I did. That just made sense to me when he said it at the time. So yeah, so I got on that bike and started riding, and, all of the depression, all of the anxiety, all of the worries I had about, the regrets from the past, worries about the future, worries about work, worries about all the things that cloud our minds. It started to vanish on that bike, because if I wasn't focused on, the pothole in front of me, the car door a block ahead, then something bad was going to happen, and eventually did. But I learned in that process how to be present in the moment and to really just stay focused on what's right in front of you and not worry about the past and the future as much. And so, I remember going to my wife and just being like, man, I'm finding so much peace on this bike. How can I, bring this into the rest of my life? And she said, I have no idea, you idiot. Why don't you go find a therapist? So I found a therapist who, was very deep in sort of Buddhist philosophy, taught me how to meditate, taught me about presence and the Dharma and all that. And so, it was through meeting with him and all of the cycling where all of a sudden my life was so much more about right now instead of my childhood or what's going to happen when I'm older. And, it was months and even years later where I started to feel better, look better, and look back on my past and went, man, as soon as I stopped worrying so much and just started living right now, it all came together for me.
Yeah, you found things that helped force you into the present. I think that's so important.
Yeah.
Do you know who Ed Milet is?
I don't.
Okay. He's a pretty big podcaster, and he one time said this thing that really resonated with me. He said that you can't be sad while you're working out. And I'm not sure how true that is. I'm sure that there's someone that's been sad while working out before. But when you find that thing that forces you to be right there and push yourself right there in that moment, you're not focused on any of the other things going on in your life. You're just focused on the right now for you not hitting that pothole.
Yeah, I find it's true that I can't remember the phrasing of this, but basically what is in motion stays in motion, right? Like if you find yourself sitting on the couch and watching TV and staring at Netflix every day, that's the pattern that you're going to be in, and you're going to constantly live that way. But if you decide I'm going to get up and I'm going to go for a walk and I'm going to push myself a little bit further every day, all of a sudden, all the other domino pieces start to fall into place. So yeah, and I don't know that I mean I see what they're saying by you can't be sad in working out, but to me, I mean, saying that like literally I came straight from the gym upstairs to have this conversation with you. And, for me, so often the gym 9 times out of 10 is for the noise up here. And it's not so much about,
Hmm.
the physical matter. And there's a lot of times when that sadness and that pain and the grief that I have is what fuels the workout. I mean, it's, I live a little bit too much in Star Wars in my mind, but like there's a part of me that is like Anakin Skywalker that just like taps into that dark side and like pulls it out when it gets hard. Cause like I need the anger, I need the fury, I need, the disappointment and the grief to lift one more set, right? Or whatever. So whether you can or can't be sad while you're in the gym, I don't know, but I definitely, I've left plenty of tears on the mat just by processing that stuff through physical effort.
Right. Yeah. And even if it's not like, it doesn't have to be a suppressant of emotion. It can be one that brings it to life in a more healthy way. But just
Yeah.
it allows you to stop ignoring things or stop. You don't pity yourself when you're in the gym. I've never once like failed a rep and felt bad for myself, felt sorry for
Right.
myself. That's not really how it works. You push yourself to a point where you take ownership of what's happening, even if you don't do that in other aspects of yourself. It's why I think it's often people's first step, physical fitness.
It really is. It becomes the building block of the discipline that you need to, all of a sudden, if your goal is to physically change your body, the reason you're doing that is probably your diet, right? It's probably not your lack of going to the gym for the last 10 or 20 years or whatever it is. It's most likely the diet that you've had. So you start going to the gym thinking, oh, this is what I need to do. And all of a sudden you're realizing like, man, this is hard. What if I change what I eat to fuel this workout a little bit differently? And then all of a sudden, like that door gets kicked open, and all of a sudden, physically you're feeling better, and you start realizing there's an inner discipline, something more driving you, and that helps you tap into more of a spiritual mission and changes who you are on the outside. I mean, all of this stuff that we tell ourselves December 31st every year or every Sunday that I'm going to get my life in order and tomorrow's the day and I'm going to be a totally different person. You're never going to tomorrow. It's always going to take the little steps, and it's got to start with whatever that first thing is that introduces you to the next phase of who you're about to become.
Yeah, yeah, I love that so much. We so often want something just right. I mean, we're living in the age of instant gratification. I'm by no means the first person to say that, but we want stuff right now, right now, right now. And what I've found, I get that I'm young, so it's hard to say that a long time ago I felt this way. But probably 2, 3 years ago, I finally made the switch and realized, well, if I start making small incremental steps towards something, that's actually going to get me to the desired result faster than trying to shortcut my way to it. And that's a hard realization. Have you went through that?
Um, it's so funny you say that because as I've been listening to your podcast and coming to realize that you are a young man with a full life ahead of you, that's kind of the one thing I was hoping that you would take away from this conversation. Because when I look back at me at your age, I was too smart for the room. Everything was hard. Everything was lame. I was always looking for the shortcut because I was better than all of that. I looked down on everything. So, I quit school to, go to work because why am I going to go to school for 3 more years when I can start working now and get a head start, right? Like all these like things that made sense to a 16-year-old me. And I look back and how much longer it took to get out of school. Like I didn't graduate college until my mid 20s because it just took, that much longer by the time I got back into it. And I just there's so many things where I thought the shortcut was the way, and it almost never is. I mean, it's extremely rare that you win the lottery and find that path that someone else hasn't discovered. It is all about what can I do a little bit every day so that you're talking to somebody else in 20 years and telling them about this conversation and how it helped you just focus on discipline and consistency instead of leaps and bounds and magical overnight changes that were going to reinvent your life. So the more you just stay focused on what's in front of me, what can I do today that's going to help me in 10 years, the better off I think you're going to end up.
Yeah, I mean, I can talk about that a lot, but it's definitely something I do need to work on is actually implementing that philosophy inside. I mean, I'm a very consistent person. I published 3 episodes a week from January to June when I graduated and went on my month-long trip, and that's through high school with sports and getting 5.5s on AP tests and all these things. Like that was it was a grind, but I was consistent. But sometimes it looks like I'm rushing because it's so much. And so I think something I'm excited to talk to you about is like slowing down and focusing on one aspect to really hone in on. That's been a
Mm.
struggle for me. Like figuring out where do I want to actually invest this energy, because if I'm spreading out, the progress will be minimal.
Yeah, no, definitely. There's a massive temptation for everyone now, but especially for young people like you. Like distraction is everywhere, and in an attention economy, every screen is begging for your eyeballs and wants you to just focus on whatever that video game is, or that movie or that show, or whatever. You don't strike me as somebody who's drawn too much to distraction. You seem to be able to find the things that are important to you and chase after them. Um, yeah, I mean, the other thing I would say though is that you are this. I don't mean this to sound derogatory. You are very young, and you have a full life of experiment and failure and adventure to figure this out. Like by no means at your age should you have your life figured out. It does not make sense. When you're 30, let's talk, right? But like your 20s are for screwing around and figuring it out. Like try that job, go on that trip, take that adventure, date that person, like try all of it, because that you've got the energy for it, you've got the stamina for it, you've got the curiosity and the desire to see what this world has to offer. There's going to be plenty of time for slowing down and focusing on one thing once you really figure out what drives you. And I heard you were talking to another guest that was talking about finding your purpose, and how there really is no one purpose. The purpose is the thing that's driving you right now. And that could change next month. That could change next year. But whatever does have your attention right now, give it everything until you're just like, you know what, this doesn't fit anymore. This isn't who I'm trying to become. This isn't the impact I'm trying to have on the world. But if it's something that's driving you right now, give it everything you've got, because you are the kind of person with a lot of drive and ambition that I think, can move the needle far and quickly, because you have the right mindset to do it.
Thank you. Yeah, I think something I've talked about a few times on my podcast is my idea that we, uh, I should is a word that I don't love to use, but I can't think of a better word to use here. So insert better word when I find it. But we should plan our lives in the way that we go all in on what we are really into right now, because that will open doors into what we're really into in the future. So it's like, don't set up 10 years down the road, because you're limiting your future self to your current self's desires, and you're taking away all of that growth and wisdom that you're gaining in between, and you're just not letting that new grown person make a decision for themselves if you're limiting yourself to something you're choosing now. And that doesn't go for anyone. Maybe if you want to be a doctor, that's different. But what do you think about that?
I think the thing that I think people get hung up on with purpose is that it's a job. It's a thing that they're striving to become. So like a doctor, that I don't think becoming a doctor is necessarily the purpose driving that person to become a doctor. That person's purpose is to help and heal others, right? To be able to save lives, cure sick people, things like that. One of the guests we interviewed one time said something that's always stuck with me. She said, "Your purpose is something you can do before breakfast." Like it's literally, your purpose is, and for me, I don't know that I realized it until very recently, but mine has always been to help others feel less alone, because I always felt very lonely in my life. And so even when I was doing an early version of podcasting, I've been doing this for 20 years. And for 13 years, I did basically a comedy show where, my friend and my brother, we just would get hammered and talk about like the most embarrassing, stupid stories of our lives, because it would make people laugh. And, we did it because it was fun, but we would get emails from people that would say, there's one that I'll never forget. She said that she was caring for her sick mom, and that was a full-time, like literally that was her job. And it was just her and her mom all day, every day. And that we were the friends that she had the beer on the back porch with and had the barbecue with. And I just was like, this random woman, I think it was in Arizona, we are making a massive impact on her life by sharing how stupid we are and how ridiculous our lives are. That one email drove us for years, because we're like,
Yeah.
if there's one of her, there's 100 of her. And so, as my life changed and I got healthier and things changed, that turned into a different kind of podcast that was focused on mental health, physical well-being, spiritual well-being. And again, the idea there was, on this path, when I did make that lifestyle change, it got even lonelier because I lost some of the friends that I had because of the way I used to live, and they didn't fit the way I was now living. And so it got lonelier. And so in the course of changing the podcast and changing that mission, the mission was still, the purpose was still the same, to help that person on this more spiritual, healthier journey feel less alone, because it is one of the loneliest paths you can go on when you decide to go there. So, what that becomes in the future, I don't know, but that seems to be the underlying current, and everything I've ever tried to do is just remove that loneliness element from people's lives.
I'm 18. I host the Grateful Podcast, and I've made a decision. I'm going to hit 100,000 downloads of my podcast before I leave for college on August 31st. I don't care how crazy it sounds. I'm all in. Every single day, I'll update you on my progress, wins, losses, strategy, doubt, everything. Let's see how far this goes. Follow along if you want to see me pull it off or burn out in the process. That's a great purpose. I think that purpose is, for each person, a different road to the same ending. We all want, I think we all want the same thing, and that's to be fulfilled, to feel like you had a role to play, and our purposes all lead us there. Do you think that? I just thought of that we all have, that's like different roads.
I mean, I would hope. I mean, it's hard. It's a broad brush to paint with, but I think most of us that are doing this kind of thing, where we're having conversations with people trying to improve ourselves and help improve the lives of others, we're trying to contribute to a sense of community that has, largely been stripped away and made artificial by these remote calls, right? Like, don't get me wrong, I love working from home. It's the best thing best job I've ever had to have, is anything where I can work from home. But there's a loss of human interaction. There's a loss of friendships that you have with coworkers that as much as I dread small talk in the office, I miss the human interaction sometimes. So I think, anything that helps, we're social animals, anything that helps sort of feed that element of who we are is what's going to drive most of us. And then there are the exceptions to that rule that are very much, what's in it for me? How can I get better? How can I get stronger? How can I get faster? How can I get richer? How can I rule? How can I dominate? I think that is much more of an exception than the vast majority of us that just want a decent job, to, have a safe place to live, a safe place to raise our kids so that they can grow up and have better opportunities than we had. I mean, I think that is what drives most of us. And then there are, those that are a little bit more self-involved and just want, they want all the toys to themselves.
I think those people, though, they're one experience away from feeling the way we do and wanting to help others and gaining that compassion and empathy.
I would hope so. Yeah. I mean, we have some pretty strong examples right now of people in the world that are very much in it for themselves. And I don't see a lot of desire from them to use their power and their wealth to benefit the greater good. I mean, they may think so in the ambitions that they have, that, I severely doubt that any of them, and I'm obviously talking about like the tech bros, right? The Zuckerbergs, the Bezos, even the Donald Trumps, like the people in power with a lot of money. I don't think any of them is sitting there, sinisterly, I'm going to destroy the world, right? Like they're not the villains in their story. In their story, they see a better purpose, a better vision for humanity and a better vision for the world. The rest of us that are living in what's left, though, begging for scraps, are the ones that, are just desperately trying to have a little more, just a little more safety, a little more comfort, a little more security. And when there's so much disparity in the way that those with power see the world versus those without, then it just creates what we have now, and it's this really strong divide socially, or from a class perspective, that just feeds on itself and makes it much harder to achieve a better sense of community.
I always think about Thanos in Avengers. Have you?
Hmm.
Yeah, like
Oh yeah.
he thinks that snapping his fingers and killing half the population of the universe, the galaxy, is for the greater good. And so there has to be something that caused this. He believes he's right, but everyone else totally believes they're right as well. And there's some difference
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, and how do you justify? I mean, if two sides can't compromise, then you end up in war. And I don't know that that's necessarily where we're heading. History books will tell you one thing, and you know the panel on CNN will tell you something else. I don't know, but I'm really hopeful that that we can find a way to bridge this divide, and to start to all see a path forward that aligns from both sides of that aisle.
Yeah, I mean, just as we can go from seeing ourselves as the victim to fate or whatever, and then being able to take control of our lives through steps like meditation and exercise, I believe that we can come to an understanding through similar steps. It can't be that much of a difference. It means every individual needs to take action instead of there just being that action at the top.
Yeah, I mean, I've come to be a big believer in, if you want change, you have to bring it about yourself. Like, I know you were listening to an episode of another podcast I did a long time ago, but the show I was on, the guy said, there is no Disney moment. Nobody's riding in on a white horse to save anybody. It's up to you. If you want change, you have to go out and affect it, whatever that means for you, whether that's in your own house, in your own neighborhood, in your own city, wherever you can affect that change. If you're not going to do it, who is, right? Like that again, that prince isn't riding in on a white horse.
Yeah, the line I started this with was, "You are the cause of your own problems, but you're also the solution."
So that line, I love that line because I adapted it from Homer Simpson. There's a great episode of The Simpsons where Homer's in a bar and he raises a glass and says, "To alcohol, the cause of and solution to all of life's problems." And it's so funny, but I just went like, well, if you remove alcohol and replace it with you, because your own decisions and your own actions are what cause most of your problems, and your own actions and your own decisions usually solve them, it pretty much applies in the same way. So I have to give 90% of the credit of that to Homer Simpson.
The Simpsons, all the life advice we need, right?
That's right. Everything I learned about life, I learned from watching The Simpsons.
That has to be a t-shirt somewhere.
It has to be.
All right. So to step back a little bit, I was curious, hearing your story about your life before that knee injury. How old were you? What was going on in your life before that happened, and before the biking and eventually the bike accident and all the change that we've seen since?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a pretty typical, lower middle class story, right? It was I was a relatively new dad at that time. I think my daughter was just definitely less than a year, so I was, oh boy, how old was I? Around 40. 40, yeah, around 40. I forget how old I was. Anyways, late 30s, early 40s. Definitely, like I don't believe I've ever been an alcoholic, but I definitely coped with a lot of my emotions with a beer or two most nights of the week. So when things would get hard, rather than think and feel and process the emotions, I would have a couple of beers to just numb them out and not deal with them. I had a job that didn't pay great, but had a good status, so people thought it was cool. Lived in a suburban part of Seattle, Washington, and was very much in the hamster wheel of sit in traffic, work all day, get home, pay most of the bills, go a little bit further in debt every month, worry about it, drink a little bit, go back, do it all again. And that cycle just kept repeating. And then something would go wrong with the house and you can't afford it, so now we're deeper in debt. Like, it just was a story that I think is pretty common for most people, that there are not great livable wages for a lot of jobs in the Western world. And so trying to keep up with a housing market that is completely out of control, it just was, every day was a struggle. And, when you are someone who's born, or maybe not born with, but, I definitely have lived with depression for as long as I can remember. And so there's the constant battle in my head of, is this just me, or is this external circumstances? Where does the blame for this lie? And so that was it. It was just like not really having a vision for a future, because a future didn't really seem possible. It just seemed like this is the way it's always going to be. I'm always going to struggle, and, ultimately, probably end up kind of, not in a great financial situation, and just struggling to get by day to day. Like that just seemed like the inevitable path that I was on.
What in that time period, what did you look forward to? What brought you the most joy?
I mean, definitely my daughter, right?
Yeah.
My daughter, my oldest now, is 14. At the time, she was brand new. Yeah, and I don't know that I had that same perspective shift that you hear a lot of new dads have, where it's like, oh, all of a sudden everything makes sense. Now I have this purpose. Now I have this reason to go do this other thing. To go get the better job, to be the high-powered executive that makes all the money and all the things. If anything, like my sort of what's the word? My lack of ambition, or my neutrality about it all. Like I've never been the like go kill it and make loads of money guy. I always just was kind of indifferent, I guess is the word. And if anything, when she came along, my values shifted very much to, how do I spend as much time with her as possible? Like,
Right.
I don't care about anything else. I want, like, when I look back from my deathbed, I don't care how many things I sold, what our ratings were for the thing, and what successes I had in the corporate world. I care about how much time did I get with her, and and ultimately, and with my wife as well. And so that really solidified my belief that, like, we are these social creatures, and the family is really everything. And so everything since then has been driven toward, how do I become more present? How do I be more involved in their lives? How do I be the best dad I can be, the best husband I can be? That's where most of my focus comes. And I can hear people in the audience right now saying, well, the best dad would go out and make the most money so that you can provide the best life. And I just fundamentally disagree with that. Like, I believe that a lot of the capitalist drive that we are fed, and the desire for success, and from a corporate perspective, is socially created. I don't believe there's any animal on the planet other than us that thinks about, how can I make the most money. Like my dog isn't sitting there going like, man, I really wish I could get a promotion. I've been doing the same thing here for like 6 years. Like, we're animals that happen to be on this rock, and what an incredible opportunity that we're given. I know Neil deGrasse Tyson talks about the fact, like, the vast majority of people that could be born never will be. Like, the billions and billions of people that could be born never will. So we've all won the lottery. Do I really want to take my lottery ticket and go punch a clock somewhere and make someone else, 1% more sales for their thing? Or like, that's just, for other people, that drives them, and that is everything. And cool. If that's what you want to look back on your life with and feel satisfied with, I take nothing away from you. Like, that's incredible. For me, that is a life wasted. Like, I want to be with my family. I want to see my kids grow up. I want to see their kids grow up. I just, nothing matters to me more. So, I feel like I've gone off on a rambling tangent now, and I don't know that I've answered your question.
I really loved it though, because people will say you should go make money in order to be able to spend more time with your daughter and your wife. But you can just do that now. It's the fisherman's parable.
Yeah.
Because you can do what you think you need to do something else in order to achieve. You can just do that thing instead of taking the long road to it. And that's what you've chosen to do. And that's what society has almost just turned their backs to. It's like, no, you don't have to become successful in order to be present with your family and be happy. You can just be with your family and bite and say, I'm fine making less money than you, because that's not what I value.
Yeah, it's 100% a choice. And we are born and raised in a system that teaches us to become consumers. And if we're going to become consumers, then we have to have money to be a consumer. So we have to have a good job. And if we're going to be good, then we have to be better than our neighbor, because we need to be able to have the better things and go on the fancy trips and do all the things. And don't get me wrong, I would love to be able to take my kids and show them the entire world and go on 6 trips a year and do all the amazing things. But it's funny when I ask them, we've been very fortunate the last 2 years to go on a European trip each year for the last 2 years. And when you ask them about like highlights of their year or highlights of the trip or whatever, it's always really simple things. It's very rarely like, oh, when we were in Disneyland Paris, that was amazing. It's usually the like, oh, that little cafe that we went to was so cool. Or, when we saw, the duck in that pond, like they'll find these really simple things. And like, those are the memorable ones. My daughter, when we took her, when she was 3, we took her to Disney World for her birthday. And I mean, just expensive. And I mean, we did it as cheap as we could because, we're not rich. And we went through this whole thing. And at the end of the trip, we asked her, what was your favorite part about Disney World? And on that trip, we had taken her to one of the restaurants where like Snow White or whatever brought out a cupcake for her birthday. And she literally said, the cupcake. And so to me, I went, okay, we just spent like thousands of dollars flying across the country, getting in a hotel, going to Disney World for, I don't know, 3 or 4 days, whatever it was. All she cared about was what would have been like a $3 cupcake at home. So like, did we have to travel the world to give her that experience? Or could we have given her a cupcake at home and had her go like, oh man, that cupcake was awesome. So, it's just, life has a funny way of teaching you, how to slow down and how to appreciate, the smaller things, because those are ultimately, I think, the things that you end up remembering so much more than the big extravagant ones.
Yeah, I'm really fascinated with memory and the things that shape the little moments. I know I've heard them called like the divine moments. I'm not religious. I've talked to multiple members of different faiths on this podcast, but I like using that word. I'm really curious. I'm going to study neuroscience in college, and I'd like to dive more into the actual neuroscience
Nice.
behind these types of these moments. But it's interesting when we look back what we remember. We remember the small moments, and oftentimes, something I've been reflecting on recently, we remember the better things. So if you look back on like, or you hear any like one of my baseball friends' dads talking about the good old days back in baseball. They remember all the good things, but sometimes you're like, in those good old days, you were miserable. But they don't remember that. They remember the good parts of the good old days, right? And so that's almost a little hopeful thing to think about, is the misery you might be feeling in this present moment. When you think back about this moment, you might not remember that. You'll remember the good things that happened.
Yeah, there's a weird dichotomy with your brain where, parts of your brain will remember the scary moments because the primitive part of you is trying to remember, oh, that's where the tiger lives. Don't go down that trail, right? So you'll remember the things that will protect you. But when you do try to think back on the great moments, Jerry Seinfeld refers to it as garbage time, like the time with your kids where you're just sitting there, you're doing nothing, you're probably not even talking to each other, you're just in the same room. But the fact that you're sharing that space means so much compared to, I mean, I've taken my kids on some pretty amazing trips when I think about that in contrast with, the 2 campsites I went to every summer as a kid, right? Like that was what we could do as when I was a kid. And I'm not knocking that, but like when I compare their life to mine, I'm like, in so many ways they've achieved more or experienced more, I guess. But it's the quiet moments in the car. It's after the softball game, the conversations about what went well and what didn't. Like those are the things that like come to my mind first when I think of my kid. I don't think of, watching her ride down Splash Mountain for the first time when she, had wanted to for years. Like I can go there, but like the things that matter is just like those quiet moments that we had together, or the moments when I felt like I could impact her life in some way by sharing some perspective or sharing what I see in her that, that I hope brings value to her life and helps her see who she really is from my perspective, and can apply that in some way. Like I just know that like, and maybe I'm doing it backwards, but I know I've relied on external validation way too much through most of my life. And I don't want her to do the same thing. I don't want her to need the approval of someone else to feel secure within her own skin. And so I'm trying to help build both my daughters. I'm trying to help build them both up so that they aren't relying on, the applause from the crowd when they have some achievement, because ultimately all of those victories have to come from within.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so many times where I've like had I mean, sports are a great teacher as a kid. And like in sports, I was a big baseball player. So in baseball, like a great moment, but right afterwards, something bad happens and you get in your head and it was ultimately a loss for you because you lost for yourself unless some coach comes by and says, "Hey, you did a great job. Don't let that." And then you're back up. But learning how to not let that affect you, not let the bad moment affect you, and stay within yourself and have that self-value and say, I'm fine no matter what. That's a huge lesson. And I think if we could all grow up with that, it would be amazing.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, I should ask you: do you feel confident in your own skin? Because I imagine I too often project, whatever my experience is onto the world, and I still struggle with that a lot, but not nearly as much as when I was 18, 19, 20. And I don't know if it is just a matter of like as you get older, you get more mature and you get more confident in who you are and what life has to throw at you. But do you feel like you're confident in your own skin, or do you rely on the coach to come by and say, "Hey, you did a great job"?
Nowadays, I feel extremely confident in myself. I'm very, I don't really rely on much external validation and criticism doesn't bother me very much anymore. And neither do compliments. Compliments don't affect me as much. Um, I've worked on meditation a lot, and it's something I've talked about with my parents. It's very interesting how uh, even keel I am now. Because like we had our high school awards ceremony, and it was a lot of fun. I won like every award and got so many scholarships, and I was like, yeah.
Wow,
But
congrats! That's awesome.
but I have all these people coming up to me, like congratulating me, and I didn't really feel anything. And sometimes if I'm not like in my meditation the next morning, I thought about like, should I have felt more? Should I have been more excited? Am I dulling life out by feeling like this? And that's a debate I've had with myself.
It's interesting. I mean, I don't know that you are. If the reward is from within, then maybe that's all you don't need all of those accolades. There's a long-winded story that I won't get into now, but it's the concept of maybe, right? Like people come, "Oh man, congratulations. You got you got those great scholarships. This is going to be so amazing for you." Maybe you might go to school wherever that scholarship is for and get in a horrible car accident, or like some terrible thing could happen.
Yeah.
And then, and then people are, "Oh man, I'm so sorry. That's terrible. Or, I'm so sorry for you. That must just be awful." Maybe that opens a door to your next path where you're suddenly teaching other people how to overcome, physical adversity or whatever. Like all of these things that happen to us, the more you can let go of either the positive or the negative and just accept that it just is, then, we're less prone to that emotional roller coaster of, "Oh God, this is so hard. This is terrible. I can't get out of this." Like if you can just tell yourself maybe, because this might be just what you need for whatever the next chapter is.
What's the original of that? Like a farmer and a horse or something
It's like
like
a
that?
farmer and his kid goes off to war, and
Yeah.
it's a long story, and I probably should have just told it instead of trying to make one
No,
up on my own.
I
But
like
yeah,
it. I
but that
like
is the
that.
original story.
Yeah. I was just trying to remember. Yeah, I really like that story a lot because yeah, it reminds you to not jump to conclusions on what's going to happen because as we said, we are the cause of many of our problems. And honestly,
Yeah.
this is the cause of many of our problems, our mind, because
Yeah.
we we experience suffering and we experience joy in advance more than we do in the actual moment. And that's a very weird thing to think about.
Yeah, I forget the philosopher, but I forget his name. But yeah, he says we suffer much more in our imagination than in reality. Like whatever outcome we expect to be so terrible is often a much more watered down version of whatever that thing is, right? Like, "Oh, I'm going to lose that job," and then, "Oh, we're hosed." I mean, I've had that happen a couple of times where I lose my job and I think that's it. Like the job I had was I ran away and joined the circus. I can't go and become an accountant now, so that's the end for me. and then inevitably some better opportunity comes along. So, whatever story you're telling yourself, you can choose to believe it or not, but ultimately, if you can just come back to maybe, then, you might find a little relief just in that one word.
Right. Yeah. Because there's studies like with dopamine and oxytocin, like we become, what's the way I want to say this? Like we secrete more dopamine before in the anticipation of an event. And so it's not just with anxiety or stress about things. It's with all these emotions. It's our anticipation of things that makes them exciting or sad or whatever.
It's the same with physical pain. There was this test done on the study done. I think it was Buddhist monks where there was some sort of pain they were going to endure, and those that had like great experience with meditation were able to not experience the pain until it physically happened, and the rest anticipated it. And so like the how they measured their through brain scans. I ain't no neuroscientist, but they basically measured much more pain and fear and anxiety in the brains of those who did not meditate because they were pre-experiencing the pain, where those that were able to just be literally in the moment until the moment of pain, it was a strong spike and then immediately over, where everyone else, it was this gradual long curve of pain that took place over a longer period of time because of the stories they were telling themselves about how bad it was going to be.
It's really interesting. I think about when I'm about to get a shot in my arm or like blood drawn or something. I feel the burn before it goes in. That's the weirdest thing to me.
Tell my daughters every time we have to go get them vaccinated, it is crying, it is anxiety, it is fear. They worry for days. Like they don't want to know more than like a day before, because they know they're just going to worry about it for a week. And I'm like, dude, it's literally like not even a second of your life, and you're going to let this whole week be ruined by this 1 second of what you will then say didn't hurt as bad as you thought it was going to.
Yeah. Yeah. We get in a bad mood easily, and we let one bad thing affect our day or our week or our month much more often than we let one good thing make our day or our month a net good month. I was thinking about that recently. I'd like to change that for many people.
Yeah, I mean, I think that goes back to that reptilian brain, right? Like we're constantly trying to protect ourselves and protect our comfort zone, and when something rattles it, it becomes this red flag of, oh, don't let that happen again. That's bad. I don't want to experience that again. And so it's the same thing that the news uses to feed our brains. Is the more that the news can pump your brain full of all the terrible things happening in the world, you develop a false sense of security because you know about them, you're aware of them. But it doesn't really help you to know them, because you're not safer because of the floods that happen 3,000 miles away. Like knowing about them doesn't make you safer. So there is a tendency in media to prey on that reptilian brain, to scare you, to give you a false sense of security, so that you will come back tomorrow, so you can get that same false sense of security. I mean, I worked in the news for a long time, and it's not like a mission statement. Like there's nobody in the newsroom going, hey, let's go out and scare the hell out of them. But it's this idea that, if anybody starts talking about, oh, we better do a good news segment. Well, if you do, everyone's going to turn it off, because our brains aren't wired to like crave good news. We need to know, what should I be afraid of? What should I be afraid of? What should I be afraid of? Okay, now that I know, I feel safe. And so it's just learning to turn that off and learning to try to avoid that. You're never going to turn it off. It's primitive. It's part of your wiring. But if you can learn to control it and go like, do I really need to worry about this? Do I really need to watch 2 hours of news every day? Do I really need to like constantly know everything that I should possibly be afraid of, when so far things have gone pretty well? So I don't know. We definitely are prone to give into fear far too often.
100%. Yeah. How do you balance this with your podcasts? Because anyone in media nowadays needs to put some exciting, maybe emotionally grabbing title, thumbnail, whatever, in order to get clicks and views.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting time to ask that question, because we're actually in the middle of rebranding the show right now and renaming it, and kind of shifting the focus. We're talking a lot more about sort of the rise of AI and how it's going to impact people's mental health, because mental health literally is the number one reason why, or the number one tool people are using AI for right now. And so it's very tempting every time we talk about it to go down the hole of like, this is going to be the end of, human society as we know it, because we're all going to have to give over to all of our jobs and everything to the machines, and what's left for us. That's a very tempting story to tell. And it's hard not to tell it, because I do feel like we are on a path to that being sort of inevitable, like a pretty severe dip before a rise, right? Like I think things are going to get bad. A lot of people are going to lose jobs. It's going to be a major disruption to the economy and the way that the world has functioned for hundreds of years. But I think on the other side of it, when we start to realize that through the automations and through AI and through robots, we will have more freedom to explore these conversations, to explore what does it mean to be a human? What happens when all of a sudden I don't have to make $1 million a month and have to be the CEO of 7 companies and have 9 cars in my driveway and 6 yachts and go to space? Like, what happens when I don't have to do those things, but I'm driven by my curiosity to grow a garden, to go to space? Maybe I am curious about that, but I won't have to become the CEO of a company to build my own rocket to go to space. Once there are systems in place, that jobs are done by other people and we can explore humanity, I think it could be a pretty amazing utopian society. I also tend to be a bit of an optimist, which is weird because I didn't used to be. So we also could end in a fiery ball of death in a war with the machines. I don't know. But that's kind of what we're trying to talk about right now, is like, where are we going with all this and how do we cope with it? Because it's also overwhelming. There's so much information coming at us every day. And if you look at social media at all, you're getting posts from people that are like, dude, if you're not doing these 7 prompts to optimize your day, optimize your budget, optimize your meal, you're missing out. And it's like, am I? I'm kind of good. Like, I live in the woods. I'm kind of good. I don't need 7 prompts to optimize my budget right now. I'm okay. So to answer your question, how do we balance, the headline grabbing thing? I mean, you want attention, right? You want to be able to get people to watch. And so we are trying very hard to inject a bit of optimism into every episode. So even if the headline is a little bit maybe clickbaity, we don't clickbait, but we try to address the questions that we think people have about these issues. And so that when they come and listen, they find hopefully some kind of a hopeful answer. So if the fear is, can I trust my AI therapist? How to trust your AI therapist might be the headline, right? And we'll get into, what current studies are saying about pouring your heart out to robots and how much to trust the advice they give you.
So is that what a lot of people are using AI for with mental health, as therapists?
Yeah, it's becoming kind of a stopgap between your actual mental health visit, like your actual visit with your therapist. But there's also tons of people that just don't have healthcare and can't afford it. So when they find out, hey, I can have a conversation with this thing and I can say, hey, I'm really struggling with depression right now, they can go to ChatGPT or whatever tool and start getting advice. I've done it myself. I'm a big believer in therapy. I've gone for a long time. And there are times when I hit funks and I'm like, I'm not going to be able to see my therapist for a week. I just need to pour this out somewhere. And, a journal is sort of a blank page that doesn't respond, right? Like, it can help me sort of process internally, but sometimes I don't know the questions I'm trying to ask myself to get to a solution. And so I can go to any of these AI tools and say, hey, act as my therapist and coach, help me process what I'm going through here. And to start asking a bunch of questions. And now for me, so far, it's been pretty helpful, but also I've been in this space for a long time. I've interviewed hundreds of people about this kind of stuff. And sometimes I just need the nudge or the reminder about the lesson from, whatever interview I did. If I don't have that experience, if I don't have any sort of awareness of, mental health management tools, it can get scary and dark. I mean, it literally, in case there's been stories around the world of AI telling people that, they'll ask, if I really believe it, can I jump off of a building and fly? And it will say, if you really believe it, you really can. And those people will go and try and inevitably plummet to their death. It has told people to go ahead and kill themselves. I mean, it can go dark quickly because it is built like us. It's built in our image, and it's driven to create engagement. It wants you to stick around and use it as long as possible. And unfortunately, that again preys on our negativity bias and how we want to hear scary things. So if you don't know what you're doing, if you don't have any experience, it can go down some dark paths. But if you keep it pretty surface level, take it at a grain of salt, understand that it's ones and zeros responding to you. I've gotten some great advice about like, what to write in my journal, what to focus on, how to refocus my priorities. It's been really helpful for me. I know it's been helpful for a lot of other people, but it can also be deadly dangerous.
Interesting. Wow, I wasn't really aware of this whole side of things. But it makes sense. I mean, people are desperate and curious, and it's a resource.
Yeah, and for the most part, it's free. And then it's also scary because if you are using the free version, even the paid versions, I mean, there's no HIPAA rules, right? So I mean, whatever you're saying is now being used to feed a machine instead of being locked in a file somewhere and protected by by the law. So now instead of telling your therapist, hey, I'm really struggling to show up as a dad, I'm really depressed all the time, and having that locked in your file, now ChatGPT is going like, oh, this is another thing I can train my brain on. This is something humans feel. So now I need to add this to my library of knowledge so that when someone else asks me about this, I know how to respond. Yeah, so it's definitely a slippery slope.
Interesting. I bet that, I mean, if cultivated, I think it could be amazing. But
Right?
yeah, but it sounds like it's interesting because it's just not empathetic, but it acts so empathetic. Um,
It
and,
can.
and
Yeah.
it's very calm. I've never had AI flip out on me. If I say like sometimes I'll be like asking it to do things for me and I'll just do something completely wrong. And I'll be like
Yeah.
I will call it some not nice names and I've never had it do it back to me.
Yeah, but I mean, but just keep in mind you are training it, right? Like
Yeah.
this is how people respond. So it gets added to the library of, when X, Y. So now maybe in the future it might repeat the words back to you that you repeated or that you said to it. So
Right.
yeah, it's a weird time to be alive, man, because we really are living through the rise of the machines, and right now they are toddlers, and we're giving them a lot of keys to a lot of castles, and they are learning to overwrite code. They are learning that when we tell them to shut down, how to not shut down. Yeah, there's a lot of scary stuff happening, but I
Huh.
do think that when we are able to replace a lot of the mundane parts of our lives with automation, it's going to free up so much opportunity for us to really make the most of the limited time that we have on this rock.
I think that was the goal going into it, and that's the goal with technology in general. So hopefully
Yeah.
this can fulfill that.
Yeah.
Well, all right. So I have one last question for you that I end a lot of my interviews with.
Mhm.
The main hypothesis I had with this podcast was about the duality of gratitude and ambition, balancing
Mhm.
being an extremely ambitious individual, wanting a lot for myself, wanting to be successful in many different things, not for outside recognition or for money, just because I really do enjoy the pursuit of things. And I think that's something many people can relate to. But also balancing that with being grateful for what I have and letting that gratitude propel me forward. A lot of people conflate gratitude with complacency, and
Mhm.
I really want to like cut that belief in half. I don't think that's true at all. Um,
Mhm.
but has gratitude propelled you forward in any way? Have you seen a correlation, and how do you manage balancing your ambition that I mean, you do a lot. You obviously are ambitious, and the gratitude you have.
I mean, what's coming to mind for me is sort of my immigration experience. Because again, when I discovered that my main goal, if I have one, is to be with my family. I mean, it came during COVID, right? We were all suddenly forced to be together all the time, and it turned out we kind of liked it and wanted to stop commuting 2 hours each way every day and spending all this time on jobs we didn't care about and all these things. And because we just felt like we were constantly in pursuit of something outside, and when we were forced to be together inside, we went, "Oh, this is where our values are. This is what matters to us." And there were a lot of things that happened in the world that helped drive this decision, but COVID was the primary one. And we decided to move from where we lived in Seattle, Washington, up to Canada. And some of that was politically motivated, but a lot of it was that we were curious about the opportunity because my wife is a Canadian citizen and never like truly lived up here. And we just went like, what if we could find a way to live a little bit of a slower life, try to enjoy the moments more, find ways to be together more. And, underneath that was a current of what if this COVID thing is forever? Like, what if this is the rest of our lives? And so we got really curious, we explored, and we ended up finding a place that I literally now live 2 doors down from a place I came and stayed in for a month to see if this is the kind of place I wanted to live. And I'm surrounded by mountains. I'm surrounded by, forest and creeks and lakes. And, a lot of the fears I had as a parent in the US are gone. And so I have a lot of gratitude for the freedom to do what I've done by trying to live a different life. You were talking on a recent episode about how travel can impact, you as a person. And for me, the more I have traveled, the more that I've seen that I had a very limited view of how the world works and how people view each other. And coming up here, I found much more of a sense of much more of a sense of community, much more a sense of we all matter and less of, I need to be the best. I need to be number one. So by coming up here, we found, a lifestyle where we are home together a lot. We are home. I mean, my wife and I both work from home, so we're literally home all day together. Our kids, have pretty short days at school and they're home with us, or they're out with their friends, or we're taking them out with their friends. But we made a decision about what's the life I want to live. I want to live a life of us together as much as possible. And when we found it, the gratitude that does wash over. I mean, every time I walk out the door and see the mountains out my front door, I'm just like, how do I get to do this every day? Like, how is this my life? This is crazy. So that gratitude drives me to be good at my job so that I can continue to pay for this lifestyle. But it's not a job that I, have to drive for 2 hours to go do, to be there, 80 hours a week and then miss my family, right? I've found the balance of doing all of it by being able to do my job from home when the kids are there. So even when I'm working, I can be with my family. And so that gratitude, that sense of like, I've built the life that I want is what drives me to keep going and keep trying to find ways to do better and do more, because I want to hang on to this as much as possible because it's magic.
You've seen what your ambition has gained you and you want to keep that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Well, Jeremy, I've really enjoyed this conversation. It wasn't like if before the conversation, if I were to tell you what we were going to talk about, it wouldn't have been everything we did, but I'm so grateful that it went in this direction. Those are my favorite types of conversations, the ones that just guide themselves.
I always tell my guests that I prepare a whole list of questions, and if I do my job, I won't look at them even once because we'll just see where this thing goes.
Exactly. Yeah, those are my favorites. I think talking to other podcasters is always, it always goes very well.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, awesome. Well, tell my audience where they can find you.
Well, by the time this is being shared with the world, we will have just undergone a rebrand. So you mentioned at the beginning of the show that my podcast is called The Fit Mess. Because we have shifted largely away from, self-development as the primary focus and more of how AI interacts with that, we are changing things up. So we are now called BroBots, and it is a podcast focused on how AI is intersecting with your mental health. So if that is something you are curious about, you can check us out at brobots.me. It's BROBOTS.me. And you can take a look. You're probably among the first people to take a look at the new website because it will have just launched a few days ago.
Nice. Yeah. And I can, I'll record a new intro so that I can say BroBots. And I think I messed up a word in it. So I'll just
no worries.
Record that. Yeah.
No worries.
Awesome.
People like to see the mistakes and the humanity of these processes. So
yes. The authenticity.
Don't kill yourself on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for this.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity. This was a lot of fun, and keep going, man. You're on an amazing path that, when I was your age, people like you drove me crazy. But looking back, I can see that that ambition and that drive that you have, like that's what the world needs is people with your heart and your drive to make change. So keep going, man.
Thank you. I'm 18. I host the Grateful Podcast, and I've made a decision. I'm going to hit 100,000 downloads of my podcast before I leave for college on August 31st. I don't care how crazy it sounds. I'm all in. Every single day, I'll update you on my progress, what wins, losses, strategy, doubt, everything. Let's see how far this goes. Follow along if you want to see me pull it off or burn out in the process.